What's going on, guys? Proof here. I'm bringing you my first recorded car fight area battle. It's me using my main deck Spike Brothers going up against Shadow Paladins with Witch support from the new set. My deck is also with new support from BT16 with the Legion support with Frozen Ogre, Bloody Ogre, Silver Blaze, things like that. I lose the toss, so I end up going second. And I end up riding up to Reckless Express, moving Mecha Trainer over and calling Gary Gannon back there. Gary Gannon is the Mecha Trainer for, not the Mecha Trainer, but the Airmo for the clan. And what he does is that when my Vanguard hits, I can drop a card and draw a card. It's very useful for me to be able to fish for things I'm missing, like Bloody Ogres, or if I'm missing Bad End and I'm trying to get that into my hand, because despite having Legion, the way I play the deck definitely likes to have Bad End be the first rise you have going to grade 3. Because when you combine those two together, Bad End and Bloody Ogre, you can wreck your opponent's hand, because every rear guard attack you have attacks for 15,000 additional power, which makes crazy power for things like Bracky, who can attack for 29,000 unboosted. So what my opponent does here is he rides up to grade 2 to Curse Lancer, and what he does is that when he attacks and you have a Shadow Paladin Vanguard, you can unflip a damage. He calls out in the main, so he counterblasts 1, drops a card, draws 2, and he attacks and hits, and I go ahead and take that hit, and when he stands it back up, I hit a trigger myself, so I'm too powerful for the main to hit. I ride up to Silver Blaze here, because Silver Blaze makes a superior grade 2 ride in what I had in my hand, because because Bracky being able to get off the field before Legion is very helpful for me, especially when I can hit for a higher stage of power. So I attack, get a draw trigger, and give the power to Bracky. What I probably could have done here is use Ganon's skill to drop Cheerful Links and draw a card, just to try and fish to get that Bloody Ogre in my hand that I really need by the time I hit that 4th damage, because I already have Bad in my hand secured and ready to go. He rides to Mordred, uses Goat, and gets Fianna, the Witch grade 3 Legion that they have right now currently on Carfight area. And he retires in the main and calls out Derma, I think's her name. I don't know why he did that when he could have called out the main or Derma to the other rear guard column and have a chump attacker with the main sitting there and poking away at me, which would have definitely helped his advantage out, even if he did hit the heal trigger. And he hits the heal, heals up 1 damage. I hit a heal of my own, and I'm able to heal because his heal went off first. And he attacks with Derma, and what she does is that when she hits, he can counterblast 2 and draw a card, if I remember correctly. So I don't want that to hit and get him some more free cards in his hand. So right up to Bad End, and all I just need is to get Bloody Ogre in my hand, and then I'm good to go for the rest of the game, in my opinion. I get a critical trigger, give that power to Bracky, which pushes him to 4 damage before Bracky even attacks. So in this case, what I wanted to do was to Soul Blast and get Bracky out of there, just to try and push him to that 5th damage. Before that, I go ahead and use Ganon's skill to drop the other Ganon I drew and draw a card. In retrospect, what I probably should have done was to discard the Cheerful Links and draw, just in case Gary Ganon comes in handy to have a helpful booster on that break ride turn. So with Bracky pushing for 26,000, he guards with 2 10k shields. Past turn, he break rides Mordred over Mordred. And what he tries to do here is call out the Witch that lets you choose an occupied rearguard circle and swap it with a grade 0 in the drop zone. Boy, he forgot to think about was that it requires a Witch Vanguard to use. So he couldn't use it, but being the nice guy that I am, I went ahead and let him take that back momentarily. And while he does that, I'm just going to talk about the construction of the deck a little bit. With the new Legion support that's out now, in my opinion, you want to save all your counterblasts for Frozen Ogre if you can. Because Frozen Ogre on Break Ride and Legion turn, it attacks for 24,000, counterblast 1 and absorb it into the soul. And then you can call out another unit, including another Frozen Ogre. If you chain those together, you're forcing out 2 cards every time, and your opponent has to guard them. And there's no hit requirement like it is for Deadly Mason now or for Skydiver, which makes it incredible to use. So he swaps out his other Witch for Charon, and I go ahead and let him do that. And I guard his rear guard attack, so I'm not letting him draw free cards like that. And then a little confusion happens with my opponent and he has to backtrack a little bit, which I'll allow him to do. So he attacks with his Vanguard, coming in for 36,000. I take that. I could have perfect guarded that, which I probably should have done thinking back on it, just because trying to hold out damage on Shadow Paladins is important. But he hits another heal trigger and passes turn. So I draw and I don't get anything useful at all. If I had guarded, I would have got that Reckless Express there, which would have been way more useful to use. But I go ahead and call out Cheerful Links just to have something to pass triggers to, so he doesn't freely drop 2 cards and pass turn, which is important, especially because it allows me to keep Reckless in the back for future use. And I double trigger, critical draw trigger, and give all the power to Cheerful Links. And then I finally get the draw up to that Bloody Ogre that I've been waiting for. So I use Ganon, drop a card and draw, end up getting myself a Sonic Breaker, which is very handy because it's going to help me survive his next turn a little bit more easier with that extra card in my hand. And he's definitely going to push me to 4 damage in this case, because what he could do is attack Vanguard to rear guard and then pass turn and just wait me out. But even then, I would just attack with bad end next turn, and then I would still be sitting with about 9 to 10 cards in my hand after draw on Twin Drive, because I wouldn't call out anything I couldn't Soul Blast off the field anyway. So I was going to get the 4 damage and start my turn shenanigans anyway. So he break rides Fianna over Mordred, calls out the witch that Soul Blast 1 to choose an occupied circle. He chooses Ganon, and I bring out Mecha Trainer because Mecha Trainer is God of starters. It's the Conroe version for Spike Brothers. And then he goes ahead and fills out the rest of his field by occupying that last rearguard circle that has yet to attack. This is, of course, after he legions. I forgot about that. He legions up and then calls out that next rearguard unit. In this case, what I want to do is I want to try and live the turn without overextending my hand, since Bloody Ogre requires me to put a card into the soul, and I want to try and keep enough useful fodder in my hands where I don't have to absorb a perfect guard if I don't have to. So he calls out Cursed Lancer again. I go ahead and guard that hit because I didn't want to risk him taking me to 4 and then hitting the critical trigger and ending the game right there, because that's foolishness. So I guard that 2 cards because he's attacking with the 5k from Mordred. He attacks with Fianna. I take that hit. First check nothing, second check heal, which marks all his heals in his deck, I'm pretty sure. I check no trigger, and I didn't want him to draw a card in this case, so instead of taking the 5th damage, which I probably should have done, I go ahead and guard that for 2 cards. Pass his turn, and then I draw the 3rd Maryland. I go ahead and break ride Bloody Ogre. Bloody Ogre skills that on the turn that he legions, you give, whenever rearguard attacks, it attacks for an additional 5,000 power, and then it bounces back to the deck. And then combine that with bad end, like I was saying earlier, you have all your Spike Brothers rearguards attack with an additional 15,000 power. So when I legion up, I return 2 crits, a heal, and then I return Frozen Ogre to the deck, because I already have a Frozen Ogre in the drop zone, not in the drop zone, in the damage zone, and then I call out another one. And so that means 2 of my Frozen Ogres have already been used, which means I have 2 left in the deck that I can use. So in this case, I swap Reckless with Cheerful, because Reckless gets 5,000 power when I Soul Blast it. It's like Bracky, and then it gets off the field, so it can attack for 27,000, 22,000 unboosted. I call out Maryland because I already have 2 others in my hand. There's no point keeping it in my hand. I attack with Bloody. Bloody's attack is that Counter Blast 2, call out a unit. I'll call out Frozen Ogre because the shenanigans I was telling you about before, and then I can still do it even after I Twin Drive, which is helpful. But then I get the last Frozen Ogre in my deck, which shuts down that additional attack that I could have gotten. And as you can see in the chat, I was a little disappointed by that. It was my last one, which could have been very useful for pushing my opponent to that 6 damage, which you can see, which you'll be able to see. But undeterred, I go ahead and keep on pushing forward with my turn. I go ahead and tweak the power up through card fight area to reflect the additional power my units get. I attack with Frozen Ogre. He attacks for 24,000 unboosted on this turn, and then counterblast 1, absorb it. And what I do here is I call out Silver Blaze, because Silver Blaze is just like Bracky, except when my Vanguard is Legion, he Soul Blasts and then attacks for additional 10,000 power, which makes a grand total of 25,000 power that he can get before being boosted, which is absurd amounts of power, which I love about this deck. It can just generate so much power on this one turn, which is overwhelming to the opponent. It's kind of like biding your time and just waiting for that one opportunity to explode on the opponent. So I Soul Blast and get Reckless off the field. Soul Blast again, attack for 40,000. My opponent overguards because he forgot that he had the trigger. Because that enough, right? What the Curse Lancer Intercept was enough, but then he drops that additional 5k on there. So that's the end of my turn. And then I thought the game was over by this point for me, because he's gonna be attacking with the Legion Vanguard, which attacks with absurd power. And then he's gonna fill out the rest of his field. And I thought I didn't have enough guard. I would need to hope and pray that he didn't get a trigger on his turn, because he has stands and he has crits, which probably would have been enough to push me over the edge. He uses Fianna Legion skill, which is Counterblast 2, and then look at the top 10 cards of your opponent's deck and choose 2 grade 0s and put those into occupied circles. So he chooses Maryland, he chooses Mecha Trainer here, and I show him the 10 cards that I got, and he chooses the 2 heal triggers that I got, and I put those behind Vanguard and then over the open rearguard circle, which is fine. They'd be better off in the deck, but there's nothing wrong with having more cheerleaders in the background supporting you in this case. So I put everything back to the deck and then I shuffle. It's a little tedious process, but that's fine. He calls out his other witch and then he attacks, and I guard that attack because I had to take this one, otherwise it would be game over. So I no guard and hope that he doesn't get a trigger. He got the draw trigger, which is fine. I can guard that. He didn't get a crit or a stand, which is amazing. So then I perfect guard this attack, and then I have enough to pass the turn over. And then, as you can see, I have 2 counterblasts open, which gives me enough to do Bloody Ogre skill one more time before the game's over. So I call out my Frozen Ogre here. I attack with Bloody once more. Counterblast 2. Absorb that card that I had in my hand. Call out a Silver Blaze again, which is going to attack for an additional 10,000 with the Soul Blast because I'm Legion. So I'm attacking for 25, and he has to drop 2 10Ks to 2 to pass me, or he can drop 15K to 1 to pass me and risk the trigger. What he decides to do in this case is go ahead and drop the 10K and risk the 2 to pass. First check Maryland, second check Badin, so I get nothing here. So I'll go ahead and go all full force into the Vanguard, and guards 5k, and then with his intercepts and his last card in his hand, he didn't have enough to stop 24,000 Silver Blaze coming through, so he had to hope and pray for the heal trigger, and he didn't get it, and that seals up the game for me. Very exciting game, and it was very close. I probably could have ended it one turn sooner had I not checked checked another Frozen Ogre before it happened, but that's the thing you gotta do in Vanguard, is you gotta just adapt and hope for the best after your initial gambits don't pay off. In this case, it was a very good game for my opponent, and witch support is going to be scary once all this stuff comes out, which we know it's going to be revealed sooner or later. But as for my deck, I'm loving it right now, and even though it's a one-turn thing that you can predict, you have to be prepared for it, otherwise it's going to blow the doors down, which I definitely enjoy. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hand cam recordings coming through. Later, guys.